Tiling textures are killing immersion in your game environments, and you might not know how to fix this. Apply one tileable texture over a large surface, and repetition jumps out like a neon sign, breaking immersion instantly. Experienced environment artists never do this. They use many techniques that break repetition. In this video, I'll show you some of those techniques to texture massive environments like a pro in video games. So first, let's look at some examples in popular games of very obvious repetition in tiling textures. So the intention is by no means to call out the art team and say that they're not good or anything like that. We'll give a bit of context. Okay, so let's start with Final Fantasy XIV Online, which is an MMO. So we can give them kind of a break because the game technically is 13 years old, even more than that. And even though it did receive some visual upgrades over the years, it is still an old game, first of all. Second of all, it's a gigantic game. And third, what we're looking at is landscape mostly. And the distance at which we're looking at now is quite far. But let's be honest, there are flying mounts in many of those maps, maybe not specifically those maps, but we can see from afar. Okay, so we do see those tiling repeated patterns, and it is immersion breaking. So the decision of optimization versus realism was made so that they kept it this way, and it's still a very good game. I personally played several years after release, and I had a very good time, and I was seeing these things. And even as an artist, which honestly made me cringe a little bit, still, it did not completely break the immersion. So I want to give a little bit of context, right? But it is still absolutely present. So I want to point out that these things are not just student mistakes or, because you're struggling with the concept. It's not only because of inexperience. It is basically by default, it is normal. Okay, it's going to look like that when you apply a tiling texture over a large surface. Now, having said that, in this case, as you can see, it's all landscape, and landscape materials are always treated differently, regardless of the engine. So we will get back on that one. Okay, so moving on to a very famous game, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. I have two examples here. So this one, if you look at what's close to the camera right here, you can see many different materials blended together over a very simple and optimized geometry, which is normal because this is kind of a beauty shot that the artist took just to show the scale of the castle. But the player pretty much never sees the environment from this angle. But still, and this is not to call out this artist, actually I used his work in the previous video that can be seen right here. And that was obviously on The Witcher 3. And the artist did amazing work. Okay, so it's not a limitation from the artist or anything like that. It's mainly this part, which is like really obvious, right? So probably in the engine, there's a system that manages the distance blend. And from this distance, the materials are blended. Then from a longer distance, it blends maybe less or differently. And then from this distance, which is very far, basically there's almost no blend or very little blend, or it kind of appears very, very repetitive. All right, so this is one example. A more, I would say, obvious example is roof tiles. So this is from the original game, and also you can notice the bricks, right? Those are not commonly accessed areas, right? You don't really, it's not Assassin's Creed. You don't jump from rooftop to rooftop. So the treatment and the I would say the budget was not spent on those surfaces. So we have here another example of a large surface, albeit not as large as this, but you know what I mean. It's still several meters high and long, and you can see this little discoloration here. It's repeated everywhere. So there is no techniques used to make it look more pretty. Now moving on to another example, and this is going to be very interesting because look at this. From the front, I mean, you can see that there are some repetition in the pattern, right? Basically, this is the same, this is the same, and this is a variation, and it's the same. Let me draw. So you can see that this pattern is the same as this one, and it is the same as this one. And if I were to change color, and you can notice that this pattern is the same as this one. Okay, but it's actually much more obvious here. And I really like to have this example because we have to give some context, right? You can see if I zoom in that this is completely repeated, completely obvious, whereas it's some work has been done here. So we're going to start from here. We're going to start to address, we have addressed the issue, right, of repetition in some very famous and very successful games and in some very beautiful artistic environments. So now we're going to talk about the solutions. We're going to start right here, right? So you can see that some work has already been done. That basically the facade here, like this part, I would say this part too, right? Even this section and this one here. So this section here too, it's way less noticeable. Okay, so you have to understand that of course some work was done to blend the materials to make it less obvious, but here it was left this way, and it was done on purpose because our first solution to this issue is with level art. Okay, you can see a very similar building done by the same artist, and we have level art. So we have the beams here, another one that is on the corner of this other part. There's another one going there, and you have also a horizontal beam and other vertical beams right here. So that is one thing. You have decals, which are most likely added in the engine. So they are standalone decals, right? You probably have some decals going on around here. Maybe those are done with decals here. Definitely that's also done with decals. And here, like the white color variation right here is also most probably done with the help of decals. There might be also some material blending. It's pretty safe to assume that some level of material blending was done. But even if that's not the case, but honestly, I believe it's the case. But even if it was not the case and the material is already like well done so that it's not super obviously tiling, well, by adding level art, so, and you see all those beams I haven't mentioned here, right? Tons of beams. This helps to break repetition very, very easily. And in some cases, as you can see, those houses, this comes from, well, another video that I made on Assassin's Creed Unity. And the artist has many more similar houses in the same style of architecture. So he has different modules, right? So instead of including the beams and all that, all the decals, right on the base model. The base model was kind of naked in a way, and then in the environment, this is where that technique was used, along with decals and maybe further material blending. Now let's hear it from the channel's partner, NordVPN. We have a great deal for you. 75% off and 3 months extra. Also with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Let's look at some of the features. So, uninterrupted streaming, next generation encryption, strict no-log policy. Very easy to set up, literally only a few clicks and you'll be done. Alerts about leaked credentials. 1 account, 10 devices. You'll have enough to connect everything in your household. It also comes with an anti-malware tool directly integrated called Threat Protection Pro. So that's a big bonus. Now let's break down this offer. Those prices are in Canadian dollars, but you will see the prices in your country's currency and the deal will be the same. This is what you should look for right here. So remember that you have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So you can try it out with peace of mind. NordVPN is a trusted company. And as you can see, you have from 73% to 75%. Of course, you have different plans. You can choose the one that suits your need. So those prices are for the 2-year plans. If we look at the 1-year plans, it's also very good. You save from 60 to 69%, which is a lot. So you see the prices. Still very reasonable, very good offer, and 3 extra months. And finally, let's look at the regular price. This is a great offer. You'll be able to browse the internet freely with peace of mind. You will have access to region-locked content, and you will save a lot of money. So don't wait, get the deal. So the next technique will be shown from examples of Assassin's Creed Shadows from artist Vincent Desrosiers, and there is actually a very long post about that by the artist, and I made a video about this very game, and we go a little bit more in depth about everything that was done regarding basically the advanced material management, and one of the topic is exactly that, right? But we're gonna kind of jump straight to a technique, because as you can see, this is of course very large surfaces, and these ones, because they were used extensively in the game, they receive like a very custom treatment. I could say maybe a bit more expensive treatment than some other games might give to some large surfaces, but this is extremely interesting. And I invite you to watch the video and watch, of course, the post from the artist to get a very deep dive, a very good look at everything that was done, because there is a lot, right? But we're going to stick to the main technique, which is material blending. As simple as that. And simply said, but as you can see here, it's extremely detailed and extremely varied. And that is just great. And you can see here, basically the behind the scene, if you will. Those are all the different materials that are available to the art team. And with the help of the right shader, right, which was created by the artist, then with vertex painting, this is the results that you can get. So there is basically an infinite infinite number of possibilities, right? If the environment artists are using these walls, even if it's in a different village, different region, it can look completely different than the other that they use. And this is one mesh and one beam. Let's say this is a module, and they can make it look completely different. So it can be one next to the other, and you can see, of course, they are playing with the height. Also, this is, I would say, a more expensive material, but a very high quality, highly detailed material. The material work in this game, by the way, is absolutely phenomenal. So you should really look it out. Look at the video on this channel, look at the posts from the artist, and look at the game itself. Play the game, check it out online on videos if you haven't. I mean, there are great examples of very, very complex, detailed material. So you see the amount of variation that you can get, and this is basically how it's done. So even with a simple setup in Unreal Engine, having 2 or 3 materials to blend with using vertex painting, this is a very commonly used technique that is a bit more expensive, of course. If you want it to be detailed, you need more geometry. And then if you go the next level, you add displacement or tessellation, well, then of course it gets even more expensive. But even without that, nowadays we can afford a higher budget of polygons. So without going crazy, by the way, right? But instead of having a plane, which in the engine is actually 2 triangles, instead of having that, which is very well optimized, well, if you need it to blend, you're gonna have to add a few segments, right? You don't need to go crazy, like a few like that, just something like that, which, as you know full well, right? Because the engine triangulates. Here it is already a triangle, but like everything is divided in 2 triangles. Well, still, this is really not expensive, right? You might not get that level of detailed tessellation and displacement with this, right? You might need to divide some more, like multiply by 2, right? But even then, that is not crazy expensive. Of course, if the game has the scale of Assassin's Creed, well, chances are, if you're working on your portfolio, you are not working on open world RPG with, thousands, tens of thousands of assets. So you're fine. But even if you were, and hopefully you will, well, there are systems in their engine that manages these things, right? The streaming, the loading, and all that jazz. So second technique is material blending by layers. So the next example is from another Assassin's Creed game. This one is Mirage, and the artist is Petar Zvezdanov. And we have amazing examples. Honestly, when I wanted to create this video, this is the screenshot that popped out in my mind. I was like, I have to show this one. Like, it starts with this, right? And then, of course, I found other. This is, I believe, 12 meters. Can be a bit more, but something like that, right? Around 12 meters. And it works, right? Let's just put it simply. It works perfectly well. We can, let's just focus on this one. Okay, actually there are 2 variations. So let's focus on those 2 right here. So you can see that there is a material there. I mean, the first thing you notice is this is material blending. Okay, so we're going to start there. So the base, the underlying technique already is exactly the same as we've just covered in Assassin's Creed Shadow. So there is some kind, there's the brick material, and it would be some kind of dry mud, dry soil that's mixed with something which served kind of as a concrete back then. So that is blended together already. That's like the first stage. Then the other level is decals, okay, that we can kind of clearly see some. I probably am not like outlining exactly the complete decal, but like there are decals here and there for variations, and there are also the edge decals, the normal edge decals that you can see here, that you can see there, that you can see everywhere, and that is explained very well by the artist in the post. So in the video that you can watch right here, and you can see here, it's actually a great example because you have the edge corner, the normal edge decal, but you have a very nice one here, and they are also leveraging the displacement or tessellation. So this adds so much, and this trick is used everywhere, right? So that is basically a combination of techniques, right? It's not just one technique, and we can actually, yeah, they're pretty much the same assets, if I'm not mistaken, just seen from another angle. And you can see what this accomplished. I mean, the geometry is already facilitating, but then you have those edge decals, normal edge decals here, that complements, because here, actually, I love this one. Here, it's pretty much a straight line, right? How can I make straight lines? Ah, there we go. See, it is a straight line here. But with this normal edge decal, it is doing a fantastic job, right? You perceive it as being eroded, and actually, at the end of the day, what's important, not straight. So this is an amazing technique. There will be videos on this technique, which is absolutely great. But this is the combination that is visible here. It's basically material blending plus some normal edge decals in this case. If you are interested in learning how to apply the techniques that we're covering while analyzing those games, I have created a course in which I show everything step by step. There are no time lapse, nothing is done off screen. I take the time to explain what we do and why we do it. I show best practices. And we are creating a small environment from A to Z. I'm showing every single step of how it's done on a professional production. I can answer any questions you might have on multiple platforms. So if you are interested, there is a link in the description and there's a discount available with the code provided. And now moving on to yet other Assassin's Creed games. So they're actually both from Valhalla Dawn of Ragnarok. Okay, so let's take a quick look here by the artist Theodore Ivanov. This here, as you see, is absolutely gigantic structures, right? And I mean, there is some level of repetition, but it's hard to tell. It's really not obvious as like the examples we've seen earlier, right? The trick here is that this was actually cut in modules, which, let's be honest and fair, they are already quite big, right? This is probably 8 meters, 6 to 8 meters. I think it's 8. So those are considered, and they fit in what we are doing here, right? They are considered large surfaces. Very briefly here, what I can say is actually more than anything, vertex painting with the moss, right? So if you look, let's focus our attention on basically one block here, right? And if we've seen correctly, it's basically cut in how many pages? Maybe, more or less, right? Let's just take a look at the scale here. So, they are divided like this, and then this piece is another different piece, which is also cut, by the way. Let's take a look. Here you go, right? You have the straight one right here, boom, boom, the rectangular one, and you have this one with the rounded edge, which is used here. Okay, so you have many different pieces, but look, pay attention. It's basically, the stone material. There is some color variation for sure, There is maybe some kind of blending with some dirt already. There might be a pass of vertex painting with dirt. This is what I suspect, right? This seems like dirt. This seems additional dirt. This looks like a decal. I'm pretty sure that this is a decal. There are some decals, but additionally there might be some vertex painting. I'm not sure. I think it's not the case because I think the vertex painting is reserved for the moss, right? And if we take a good look here, let's compare, like, let's call this one block number 1 and this one block number 2. Are they similar, right? Maybe I did not divide them like exactly perfectly, but let's just take a look, right? Can you see some repetition? Well, honestly, I see this little pattern, which seems like a 6. Okay, I see it repeated here. I honestly don't see it anywhere else. So there will be, I see it here mirrored, right? Let's put it this way, and then I don't see really much. So of course there are some stuff that are a little bit more recognizable, like those 3 dots. I see some dots. They're not the exact same. I see some dots, but see, it's done very perfectly, honestly. And you can see, like, the moss is distributed differently, right? So your eye is not drawn to, oh, I see this pattern being repeated. So it works perfectly, right? Like, we can examine other parts, but I think I'm making a strong case here, right? There is some repetition if you look very, very closely, but honestly, it's very little, and it's very impressive, I would say. See, I can see this pattern being repeated here, but you see that how it is distanced, right? Like, there are 3 blocks in between, so there's kind of no way that you're gonna see it. See, if you like spend enough time, you're gonna see those little things, but it's done very well. And I see this one, and I see this one, but this is, because I've been doing these kind of techniques, I've been applying them to my own projects, to other projects, so it's normal that we can identify. But the average player, and I would say a lot of artists, would also look at this and like quickly go, oh, that's good, that's convincing. Okay, they sold us the immersion on this one. So we have another example from the same game from artist Radi Avramov, and you can see here, we can see on this one, it's mainly the use of decals, right? That seems to be mesh decals, that seems to be basically included with the mesh. And like, you see a lot of them. You can actually start to notice like some copy and paste, right? In some cases, like this one is the same as this one, but it's offsetted. Of course, it's gonna happen, but it's absolutely not a problem, right? Because the goal is, from a distance, it is convincing, and the artist could sell basically the immersion. That's how I put it. It's really convincing. We're not questioning, well, it's the same, it's just copy and paste. No, we don't feel, we don't see it, right? And here I suspect this looks, either this is like a normal edge decal here, additional. There might be some others, or those are part of the geometry, but there's a lot of decal works in this one. So there is definitely some material blending. There can be a mask applied to the tileable texture. Also, the fact that it's using different types, it's definitely the same style, the same color. I don't think it's just the same material scaled 4 times or something like that. I think they respect the textile density and all these things, but it is a variation of the stones that can be found here, right? So this also helps to simply have another material, and then there might be a big mask applied for color variation, for kind of dirt, dust, erosion, and general wear and tear. Then you have maybe some, I suspect there might be some normal edge decals. There might be, like very specifically placed cracks, decals additionally, and then the leaks are strategically placed, right, so that it doesn't repeat that much, but you can you get a sense that this is dirty, this has been eroded, there has been a lot of rain, and it's seen, I would say, better days, but it's been standing for a very long time, right? So those are all working extremely well. So next up, we're going to explore the next technique in Unreal Engine. And I have used a material from Megascans. I'm going to link the asset ID in the description so you can find it easily. And this technique is called macro variation. So we could do it custom and spend a lot of time, but the goal here is just to explain the techniques. So I'm going to show you the easy way, which is to get a material from the starter content. So if you don't have the starter content, you can add it by clicking plus and then getting the starter content in your project. You will get the gold material, and the gold material has this macro texture variation, which is excellent. So what you want is basically to select all that and to copy it. Okay, so you need the macro texture variation, you need the reduce macro contrast, and the multiply. So you copy this and you paste it in your material. As you can see, this is as simple as it gets, right? I just connected the 3 textures from Megascans, but then I pasted actually the macro texture variation. So what that is, it's using a mask. This is coming from Unreal Engine, okay? And the mask is basically tiled with 3 different values, okay? So you have the small detail, the medium, and the large details. Those values are extremely large, so this is why it's going into a lerp with a reduce macro contrast, then it's multiplied, and in the base color. Okay, so the result is this. See, I have actually, those are 3 meshes, right? But I just wanted to show that they tile perfectly, right? So let me just select something else. And then you see with the macro variation, it helps so much already. So this is a very powerful technique. As I said, it's already in the engine with the gold material. So you have like a very good system that you can already just copy and paste. And then you could also, of course, play with the values. And it does an amazing job. So see, like at a certain distance, I mean, honestly, this is all you need. But then, of course, if you look closer, you can identify some spots a little bit. But honestly, it's a great technique, and this is used in many games. I suspect it might be used on the examples of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, Dawn of Ragnarok. It works very well for such repeated patterns, right? So that is technique number 4. Now on to our last game example. This is from Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, the Order of Giants DLC. And this is from the artist Pavel Kostecki. And we have a very thorough breakdown. This is just really amazing. So much information. And let's take a look. So it's going to be, of course, those very large surfaces, which are, well, pretty much everywhere, right? The environment work has been done by many different artists. As you can imagine, it's gigantic and there's so much stuff going on. It would be surprising that only one artist would do that, right? So here we have some selected modules. as you can see, there is another material or other materials. Let's just take a look out of curiosity. See, it's just different concrete, different bricks, different stones, right? So this one is not featured because we are talking and focusing on this one, which has all the variation that you would ever need, right? So this is how it goes. This is a 12-meter high asset, right? Up until here. And then there's another part which is using the same tileable material. But anyways, so as the wall height was 12 meters, base tileable stone block texture was tiled 3 times vertically, 4K, 1K per 1 meter. Very straightforward. This is how you establish and respect the textile density. You can see, I guess, a good advice is to use a good material, right? In this case, it's a material that they created. And you see, it's not just a basic stone, right? There is a lot of weathering. There are spots, stains, some leaks already, and some moss, very subtle moss, but there is some. There is also some dents or chips. So there is a lot going on in the material itself. So already, right, with just the tileable material, it looks like this, which is honestly, it's kind of busy, let's put it this way, but in a good way, in a way that already makes it less super obvious. Then, of course, if you look closer, well, you will find the repetition, right? But this has already, there is already some work that's been done so that it's already kind of starting to create the illusion of you know, okay, it's not tileable, it's not repeated that much, right? It definitely is in reality, but the complexity and I would say that the level of details added to a simple layer, which could be, you know, just the stones, it's already doing a good job. So here we have the fifth technique, which is the mesh decal texture. So to add visual context, large-scale details texture was introduced as a mesh decal. So let's take a look here. So again, you have basically very clearly explained here. You have the 12 meter up until here, and you have an extra piece here, which goes there, right? But since it's treating the same tileable material, it is included. So it is included here. So you have, as you can see underneath, you see the brick pattern, right? You see the bricks themselves, but you see a lot of decals added onto it, right? Those are custom decals. So for all we know, it can be one big gigantic polygon, which I don't believe it is, but you know, when it's done custom, you can kind of pack a lot of decals with different colors and all that. You can do that the way you want, right? So you have the albedo, which is what we've seen, and you have the albedo plus alpha transparency. So the artist will be able to play with the with the opacity, kind of with, you know, the level of intensity. So that gives a lot of controls. Then let's go here, and then we see basically the final result. So this is great. This is great, and with that much control, and you know, again with custom decals, it's actually kind of it's kind of doing the job of the macro variation that we've seen, right? It kind of is doing the work of the material blending with vertex painting, because you can do exactly what you want, right? So it's basically the deluxe version of everything. It's kind of, it's using ideas from all the techniques almost that we've seen so far, right? And see, you have like a large leak here. You have to be careful when it's going to be next, like many different meshes next to each other, you have to be very careful so that it's not obvious, right? But furthermore, the artist explains how to get away with it, right? So those are example modules. So you have the small one, which I believe is 4. That is most likely 8 or even 10 meters. This is the, the big one, basically. So you have this one, and this one, right? I'm not exactly sure about the length, but it does not matter that much. Here is a different geometry, and you see that there is this thing going on right here. And in order to integrate that and to make it also believable with what the artist is doing with the mesh decals, which is, like the level of dirt, the wetness, or, the proximity to water. So essentially, either it's not technically moss, but, that kind of stuff. And here we go. So this is the explanation. So this is another decal. So to blend big surface intersections inside modules, additional mesh decal texture was created, right? So this is exactly what we have observed, so that it fits perfectly one next to each other. And here we have the mesh decal texture alpha. So here, to ensure models would seamlessly connect, the artist had to make mesh decal alpha near to black, where the mesh decal would be cut. So you see, this is really the secret of making it work perfectly, right? So black alpha would reveal underlying base stone block texture. Base stone block texture would always tile between modules, as the smallest module is 4 meters and the others are multiplication of 4, 8 or 16. Well, so we have our answer for the dimensions. Shapes of those near to black spots look like just another leak on the wall. So that is brilliant, right? So those sections that you see that are black, sorry, I don't want to cover it, and you have another one here, it's what will connect all the pieces together, right? This addition to his so the texture alpha is allowing the artist to see, we can see it here, right? So basically he's removing the like you can see, right? He's removing what is on the decals so that it allows the mesh to blend perfectly, because let's go back all the way, because this tiles perfectly, right? And all this noise, essentially, which what the decals are creating, which is super realistic and really adding a lot, but this is visual noise. If you just keep it this way and you tile it, well, you're gonna see that it's repeated, right? Because here, see here, there's like very little, and here there is a lot. The decals are actually used really strongly on this side. So if you were to copy and paste this asset, it would look completely, immediately we could recognize, oh, wait, that's the seam part, right? But what the artist did is brilliant, because by having this little texture alpha, this extra control, this allows to remove that. And yes, you can recognize some patterns, right? Which this one is here. But wait, there's this very big stain here, which is not here and not there, right? Because it's been leveraged, like he leveraged the texture decal. And then, of course, also, they are copied and pasted and mirrored, so it adds variation. This is kind of a illusion, right? Optical illusion that helps really sell the the repetition. You can tell if you look very closely, like this one is here, but and okay, this one is next to it also, right? But then on the left, this big one is nowhere to be seen here nor there. It is different, right here. So it works perfectly. So this was, I believe, like it's kind of the culmination of everything we've seen. And here we are in a DCC. I'm using 3ds Max. So we have our large 12-meter high mesh, and the textile density is respected, right? So it's 1K for 1 meter. And we're using the same material from Megascans. So it's completely tileable and completely visible. And then here we have our mesh decal. So what is that exactly? Is the mesh and the decals, right? It's as simple as that. And if I go a little bit closer, you can see, okay, and you can see that I'm using a large one, which is the mud stain, which maybe some people are familiar with. And I have another one here, another one there. So by using all that, this is a mesh decal. It's a mesh plus its decals, right? And it's going to be treated as one asset, which of course, if we are going to talk about optimization, there will be additional draw calls, right? Because it's not just one material, it's one plus one that we can barely see, right? But if I go closer, you see there's one decal here. There is another one underneath. Can I select it? It's kind of difficult to select. I did, right? The big leagues. I have two on the side, which is actually the same very large leak that I cut into so that they would connect and tile correctly, right? And kind of trying to emulate what the artist from working on Indiana Jones did. So we have many decals, and I didn't go crazy. I kept the free or easily accessible assets, right? So that's why I limited myself to using only Megascans assets, including the decals. So this is why those are not custom decals. I could not really like package them and optimize them the way that it would be done on the production. But this is just for the clarity, for also people watching this video easily can access those assets and try it for themselves, right? So now let's jump into Unreal Engine. And next to our previous example of macro variation, now we have our example of mesh decals. So if you see, there are, in this case, 4 draw calls. I could combine those actually. So I could further optimize it to 3. But if you see, it's doing a fine job, right? If we look at this distance, well, you can see that this is completely repeated. And here, I mean, yes, of course, you will be able to see some patterns, but imagine that you also use a macro variation on top of, and basically, quite honestly, this is what I feel would be as close as possible as what the artist from Indiana Jones has been doing. Like, it's a more complex, more layered material, right? So if you have that, and then on top of it, you are leveraging the mesh decals technique, well, then, like, you have basically the best of both worlds. Now, this video doesn't really cover the optimization and, you know, making it, because I know some technical artists might be like, are you insane? Okay, this is for the purpose of showing clear examples, right? There are ways to optimize it and making it work, but I think visually we can now all understand how to approach and how to successfully break the repetition of tileable materials. Now, as promised at the start of the video, we are going back to the landscape materials. We're not gonna cover this in this video. There will be videos on this specific topic in the future, but for now, I just wanted to at least give some information and, you know, as to why it's treated differently, because landscape are by nature very different than even the largest assets that you can use. So the common techniques that are used of course, is using different materials, but if you've been experimenting, I mean, those are different materials and they both tile horribly. Common techniques are macro variations, just like what we've seen today with the gold material. Distance blend, which is a simple trick of a few nodes in your shader, and you can just determine how like basically different tiling for the same materials, and you can use a soft fall off like this, right? You also have material blend with a mask, which is kind of the idea of macro variations, but a bit more custom. And you have texture bombing and cell bombing, which are slightly more advanced concepts, but you can research those topics and experiment on your own landscapes. So you can find more resources from Epic Games on the mesh decals topic with more details, custom asset and textures that you can use to experiment. It's really great. I will link that in the description. And now this concludes our exploration of how to texture large surfaces properly. So many examples were given, like bad examples, what not to do, very good examples, what to do, and some techniques shown in Unreal Engine. So I hope this helps. To be honest, there is a bit more to this topic, but those are the main points that you should know. So thank you very much for watching. Please leave a like, a comment. You can tell me other games that you have found very obvious styling. I would be curious and interested and I would like to check it out. Many more videos showing techniques, showing how to do things will be coming up on the channel. So stay tuned and see you soon. Shout out to the members of the channel, and you are all welcome to join. Additional perks will be added very soon.